Pregame.com.
Pittsburgh at Cleveland, Week 17 NFL action. All right, listen, we'll prep this in overtime. You won a bet against me. You're so excited. We'll discuss it. I think it's a sign of a serious problem, but we'll talk about that in overtime. I'll get you your $500 out so you feel good about it. I know you were crying.
Make sure they're nice and crisp. I don't want no ratty $100 bills from your first communion.
So $2 bills maybe for that. All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we actually focus on trying to provide some value for the listeners and the viewers?
I provided a lot of value last week for them.
And then in overtime we can talk about
But I was right, you were wrong?
Your issues. All right, so about this game, sorry to pull you out of your joy here, what's your projection on Ben's playing?
Ben will play this week, whether it's starting or not starting. They're going to get him 25 to 30 plays for sure.
All right, so that's been publicly released. Now, do you get a sense that that's like a pitch count, or do you get a sense that that's the minimum? If you had to guess how many plays he's going to play, what would you say?
My take is he's going to start the game. They're going to go with it. If Baltimore gets a big lead on Cincy, you're going to see that pitch count be a lot less. If Baltimore's in a fight, I think you'll see Ben in the game longer because clearly this game means nothing if Baltimore wins.
So that confuses me. The act of him playing presupposes he's ready to play, right? So the only reason you wouldn't play him would be if you think he's an inferior quarterback while not 100% to Charlie Batch, which I don't think that's the thought. Mm-hmm. Or number two is potential injury prevention. But if injury prevention was how the Steelers approach things, then how in the heck is he playing with 2 minutes left against the 49ers when they're down by, over 2 touchdowns? So this whole 25, 30 snaps things, it doesn't make it. It makes sense to me if they're saying, hey, we're going to rest our starters. This is a situation where the Steelers, if you look at the game line for Baltimore since, you look at the likely game line here, and we should talk about that. The Hilton has this, I think, 4.5, I can't remember. And then it looks like BetOnline has this at a line around 6.5, though it's 7.5 plus 110, so it's between 6.5 and 7. Let's talk about this game as if it's 6. It's kind of in between there. I guess my question is the Steelers have about a 30% chance to win the division. If you look at the odds of them winning the game and Baltimore losing the game. How in the heck wouldn't Ben play the whole game if he's able to play 30 snaps? What is the rationale?
I think that this is a situation, and from what I've gathered from the people I've talked to back in Pittsburgh and with reading a lot of the stuff from the beat writers that cover inside, this is a situation, should the Steelers actually pull it off, win the game at Cleveland, and Baltimore would fall, if Ben doesn't play, they will then have a first-round bye. And Ben will not have played in almost a month, and that is too much time. They want to get him some reps. This is a situation.
Okay, so they wouldn't get him reps if he wasn't physically able to play. Thus, the question is, if he is physically able to play, why wouldn't he play the whole game?
Because if the game proceeds that it is not, if Baltimore's winning in a row. Well, if the game transpires, they're in the third quarter, and you look up at the scoreboard and Baltimore's up by 21 points.
So what you're saying is, if the game becomes meaningless within the game, you get him out.
Right.
But if the game is meaningful, he plays the whole game.
Probably.
So where's the 25 or 30 snaps coming from?
That I think that irregardless, even if Baltimore scores, let's say on the first 3 possessions of the game and takes a 21-0 lead, they want to get Ben just some work so that he's not rusty.
So you're saying in your mind, that's a minimum no matter if the game was meaningless or not, and then going beyond that is based on the meaning of the game.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so otherwise, now Big Ben's worth 3.5, 4 points. Batch looked good last week.
And that's a very good point, where you said Ben's worth 3.5 to 4 points. Last week when we did this video, I didn't have a play on the game. Come Sunday, when the public got involved in the game, Early in the week, there was projections of the line at 16.5 with a hobbled Ben. That line went on Sunday to 10. I decided on Sunday morning to make a play. And while we always talk about value, they were making Ben a hobbled Ben. They were saying he's worth 6.5 points.
So and you're making a great distinction about a hobbled Ben, because this isn't like A or B. A guy's there at 100% or he's not there at all.
Right.
This is a guy's there at some percentage, less than 100, or he's not there at all. So what are the two factors with injuries to think about? One is how good's the backup. Montana might be the best quarterback of all time, but Steve Young was the fourth best quarterback of all time. So how much of a drop was there? Not, that's a classic case of a great backup. And then with the Colts, we're seeing, a super extreme case, because you had a guy with Manning who had an inordinate role in the offense. Now, the second factor between relative quality, the first factor, after that, the second factor is if he does play, what percentage of his full strength is he going to be? And I think we saw with Big Ben, after watching Charlie, and again, different defenses and Monday night on the road, but Charlie Batch looked better against the Rams than Big Ben did against the 49ers.
Oh, absolutely.
You got to wonder what the true adjustment is in a case
but
like
my
that.
point is there was too much of adjustment last week. 6.5 points was ridiculous.
So you ended up firing on the -10?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so do we agree max motivation for the Steelers this week, at least until and again, I always question that. When is a game really out of reach? Because Baltimore was up to, 21-0 against Browns last week? Mm-hmm. And the Browns were driving I think it was 20-0 actually. Mm-hmm. So the Browns were driving to win the game, 20-14. I mean, even if Baltimore's up 21-0 midway through the third, is that game over?
It's not technically over, but I think they're going to view it as that. The Steelers, this would be one of those ones where you're probably looking at this game, there's going to be max motivation in the first half, for sure, because, they're not going to know if a game's out of hand or not.
So I think you're making a great point, is in certain scenarios, and I think it's going to be a minority of scenarios, but in certain scenarios, Pittsburgh's motivation will change later in this game. And perhaps the first half is the purest possible handicap. Now, would you look to do a first half play potentially?
With this situation, this is a spot that troubles me. I actually think that both teams have a shot of losing this week, to be honest with you. These are dangerous scenarios.
I hope Baltimore's -2.
Well, Baltimore, but this is a game for Pittsburgh. Cleveland is it's more of a rivalry for Cleveland than it is for Pittsburgh.
But what's Pittsburgh's record against Cleveland? Won 19 of 20 games? And at some point, we got to quit saying and that's one of the things we talk about with all of these Ohio games, Cincinnati, Cleveland, is Pittsburgh will have more than half or at least half the stadium.
Granted,
it's like a home game.
Yeah, Pittsburgh travels all around the country.
Yeah, but if it's a bus ride, it's different than going to Arizona or whatever.
Absolutely. But Cleveland would like nothing better, to play the spoiler role here. And Cleveland played Pittsburgh, tough on that Thursday night game.
You've had some great insight here, but I just think that as we move, and this is kind of my vision, as we move past what's the right way to say this? Let's say the 90s and the magazines and the ATS records on turf and all this stuff. That was a step forward from before that, when there was none of that stuff available necessarily, pre-internet, and the magazines weren't being published. But then I don't hear people talking about a lot of that stuff anymore. This whole idea of they like to play spoiler. Well, heck, what NFL team doesn't want to win? Haven't we seen with the Colts? It seems like one of the things you're hearing a lot on ESPN now is that these guys are going to play hard in pretty much every game. The only time you might not see that is if there's massive team turmoil. And maybe you're seeing that with Tampa Bay. But let's talk about that. What teams this week, going into Week 17, can you put them on 2 or 3 fingers, the teams you think won't give max effort?
Well, let me answer your question with a question.
So you're not going to answer?
Well, because
No, go ahead.
The point of it is every year in the final week of the season, there's going to be games that one team, it means they have nothing to play for.
Except their contract and their careers.
The contract and careers. But
don't we agree, and I'm going to let you get to your point, but don't we agree that there's an overestimation of the value of a must-win? I think a classic, most pros I know are betting against a must-win team.
Right, because Vegas is making you pay a premium for that, because every Joe Blow, John Q. Public guy knows Team A has to win to get into the playoffs. So
but in theory, you should pay a premium if the other team isn't trying as hard. The only way fading that premium makes sense is if you think the other team's trying as hard.
We did a video earlier today I did with Steven Nover. The Detroit Lions this week are a 3.5-point road favorite at Green Bay.
Now, there's a difference between resting starters versus motivation. If the quarterback, if Rodgers isn't playing, that is meaningful. Right. But do we think that Cleveland's going to rest their starters? No.
They're going
but all this talk about, want to play the spoiler, it just feels like cliches that I want to look past. And maybe some cliches are true.
See, this is one where I totally disagree with you. And here's the example that I'm getting to. If you have a team that's out of the playoffs, it's the final Sunday of the NFL season, and you have a chance to play spoiler, you're playing Team A, who happens to be a non-division team, and you're playing Team B, a different example like this game, where it's your division opponent, it's one of your arch rivals. You can't tell me that they're not going to be more motivated to play spoiler against a division rival than they would a non-division rival.
Yeah, and maybe it's semantics. Maybe I agree, but I think the idea is, will they play at max effort or will they play at max plus effort? Now, which semantically, that makes no sense. How do you get beyond 100%?
But we talk about that all the time, that you do.
And you do see teams at a fever pitch. It's rare that you see teams seem lethargic or lackadaisical. They usually are trying, but then sometimes you see a fever pitch. And you're saying that potentially you're going to see a fever pitch from the Browns. I think that you got to look at the Dream Crusher scenario too. Is at this point, Colt McCoy is likely, he hasn't even practiced yet, so I can't imagine he's playing. Now, this team started out, you remember, Browns were one of the, you know what the Browns line was? I remember because I played Cincinnati, or I actually played Cleveland in week 1 of the Hilton. They were laying 6.5 points to the Bengals in week 1. Browns at home minus 6.5. Now, that's funny in hindsight.
Right.
This Browns team, this was the year they were going to surge up and make the playoffs. This has been a huge disappointment. They're talking about McCoy being a career backup now. The Hillis guy is whatever's going on with his hamstring that lasts 12 weeks or whatever. He's not playing. I just think this team's ready. And again, I'm not saying they're going to pack it in because that film's going to be there when the next coach is there or free agency. But I just don't see a fever pitch with the Browns.
Well, they were supposed to take a step forward this year. I don't think that anybody really considered them as a playoff team when you're in the same division as Pittsburgh and Baltimore.
But Cincinnati had controls their own destiny to be a playoff team.
Right now.
Well, right now, yeah, this is the last week of the season.
But nobody did it. But Cleveland, yes. If they look up at the scoreboard and Baltimore's losing, Pittsburgh's going to be more motivated because they can win the division. Cleveland's going to be more motivated to not let Pittsburgh get that. On the same token, if Baltimore's winning big, the motivation is going to leave for Pittsburgh, but it could leave for Cleveland too.
Listen. This money's sitting here.
Here's a good example, though. We're rivals. If I made a bet with Dustin, if we did a $500 bet and I won it off of Dustin, I would take the money off of Dustin and I would enjoy it, but it wouldn't give me the same pleasure as taking the $500 off of you.
We'll discuss that in overtime.
Okay, but it's the point. It's your rivals. It's the guys.
But let's look at it was I think the last 2 years that they've played the Browns the last week of the year. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
But it was either last year or the year before. It was a similar scenario. No, they had played Miami 2 years ago, the last week of the year, because they won that game. So last year they played the Browns. I was actually at the Pittsburgh airport flying back to Vegas, and I remember clearly it wasn't even a game. I mean, this feels pretty analogous to last year's game, wouldn't you say? And I think at the time, Pittsburgh actually didn't even need the win. So I guess I haven't seen this fever. The real question is, are the Browns going to come out at a fever pitch? Personally, I haven't seen that.
Do you think they played a spirited game in the first meeting at Pittsburgh? I know Pittsburgh had many opportunities in that game to put it away, and they didn't. But Cleveland had an opportunity.
I sensed a max effort. I didn't sense a fever pitch in that game. But whatever pitch there was in that game, it seems like there'd be even less now. But all right, so let's talk about. Let's see how we want to look at this game now. Pittsburgh's motivated. Really, it might come down to that. It might come down to the idea, is Cleveland going to be at a fever pitch? I don't think they are. I think this is, it's funny because we've been right a lot this year with Pittsburgh videos, but I think that sometimes simplicity is a good thing. And I think this is simple. The Browns don't have a good quarterback. And we've seen this before, that when Pittsburgh plays a team that doesn't have a good quarterback, there's two scenarios. They end up winning by 30, or they end up winning by 6. But the given is the other team isn't going to score a lot of points.
Well, Cleveland's at a disadvantage in two fronts. What you said with the quarterback is true. And the other thing that they don't possess, where some teams it's been able to keep some teams in games against Pittsburgh, is not necessarily the elite quarterback, but having an elite running back that can do. In Pittsburgh's been for years, you don't run on them. But this year has not been that characteristic year.
Yeah, except we're like third in the league. You're right. Last year was a historically good rush defense, and San Fran and Pitt this year is in that same territory as Pittsburgh. I think at a given point was, like late in the season was 58 yards a game or something. I mean, like, it's not, forget 100 yards. Denver ran for 160 yards in the first quarter against the Patriots. They were giving up 60 yards a game. I agree. It's not historic, and to get kind of inside baseball a little bit, Aaron Smith and Ziggy Hood, or as Tomlin calls him, Evander Hood, is just maybe not coming on like we need him to. And that's the thing you'll see. And Worlds, who replaced Woodley's not looking to play this week, is what I'm hearing. The rush, you're right that Cleveland can run a little bit. It's not going to be totally futile, which is what it's been in the past. So here's my prediction: is personally, I think Pittsburgh's going to cover. I think they got to. I think that San Fran game has them still mad. They ran really well against the Rams. I think they keep running the ball, but I think that because the Browns don't have a good quarterback, I think Pittsburgh ends up covering this game. And again, I'm guessing the line's in the 6.5 range. If you do like the dog, though, I would parlay it with, and we've talked about this, it to me is a correlated parlay. I don't like the dog, so I'm not going to do it. But I find it to be far less than 25% chance that it's going to be the dog and over. So if it's going to be less than, if the dog is going to cover, I think a disproportionate amount of time it would go under with the dog. So if you like the dog, correlate parlay with the under. Personally, my strong opinions on Pittsburgh here. Any closing thoughts?
No, this is a game for me right now, unless the line does something drastic like last week that caused me to get into the game late. I don't see me playing this game this week.
All right, guys, that's it for the main section, which went 18 minutes. But now we actually get Marco is going to get to brag a little bit. All right, so we're going into overtime right now. All right, so if the picks are over. If you'd like to hear Marco gloat and turn red, keep watching. Now explain this to me. This is $500. Now, we all like money. You more than most. Who we kidding? What? You've tweeted about this. You've posted in the forum. I'm surprised you didn't do like a little handheld video. I mean, what is going on? Is it just beating me?
Absolutely. Pure and
So
simple.
really, it's a compliment.
So the difference is
It's like that. It's like
the fact that I won. We're talking about it in overtime. If you would have won, we would have led the
If I
video.
would've-
We
if
would have led the video with it.
If I would have won, I would have collected it like every other win of
Yeah,
mine
yeah, yeah.
with Jerry Rice.
Let me put it here. You're not the guy that just hands the ball to the referee.
You're like Billy
You've
White
been doing
shoes.
cartwheels in the
Yeah,
end
see,
zone. And,
I'm like Jerry Rice. You're
Yeah.
like Billy White Shoes
Yeah,
Johnson.
okay.
You want to get up? I don't think the table can hold you. But you want to do the dance?
Yeah, I'll just take the money and we'll add a new suit. You know, you funded my wardrobe last year. We got away from the bets, so this
Maybe
year,
I can write this off.
you know, I'm sure there'll be a way you'll find how to do it.
All right, guys, listen. If you want to hear more from Marco about the 500 he won, check him out on Twitter, Marco in Vegas. If you want to actually hear betting information, you can go to RJ in Vegas. All right,
It
guys.
would be the wrong information according to last time. You know, you can go with the guy that gloats, which actually means I was right.
Are you losing your voice?
No, I'm just enjoying myself a lot. Happy New Year, everybody.
Hey, remember, guys, all of our videos go in the special forum thread, pregamevideos.com, in which they're all in one super thread in the forums. And additionally, all of the participants actually participate in that thread. You can ask them any questions. Talk to you there.